Thank you very much. I will call this Tuesday, June 4th, Board of County Commissioners meeting back to order, and we are on item number 7.
Item number 7 is the proclamation remembering D-Day. Stan Vanderwerf, Commissioner, Board of County Commissioners.
And Commissioner Vanderwerf, before you begin, if we have any attendees here today here for this item, please feel free to make your way forward as we read this. Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And for those that may be interested in speaking, we do have some people here for this proclamation. Feel free again, as Commissioner Bremer mentioned, to come down to the dais. And after we read the proclamation, you'll have an opportunity to speak. So at this time, what I would like to do is make a motion to approve the proclamation remembering D-Day. Whereas this year marks the 80th anniversary of D-Day, when on June 6, 1944, more than 130,000 American and Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy, France, and thousands more parachuted in behind enemy lines on a mission to liberate Europe from the control of Nazi Germany. And whereas on the eve of the operation, the largest amphibious assault in the history of war, General Dwight D. Eisenhower issued a message to the Allied Expeditionary Force saying, "The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. We will accept nothing less than full victory." And whereas 4,414 Allied troops perished on the beaches of Normandy on D-Day, including 2,400 Americans, and more than 5,000 were wounded, all of whom gave their all to change the course of history and to bring liberty to millions. And whereas hundreds of Coloradans took part in Operation Overlord, the code name for the Battle of Normandy, and whereas we call upon all Americans to observe this day with programs, ceremonies, and activities that honor those that fought, so that men and women they had never met might know what it is to be free. Now, therefore, the Board of El Paso County Commissioners hereby proclaims its gratitude and appreciation for the heroes of D-Day, whose selfless service catalyzed the deliverance of oppressed people and secured freedom for decades to come. Done this 4th day of June 2024 at Colorado Springs, Colorado, the Board of County Commissioners of El Paso County, Colorado, signed Cami Bremer, Chair, Carrie Geithner, Vice Chair, Lejinos Gonzalez Jr., Stan Vanderwerf, and Holly Williams, members, and attested to and signed by Steve Schleicher, Clerk and Recorder. Do I have a second?
Second.
That has been moved and seconded. Thank you, Commissioner Vanderwerf. All right, do we have any members of the public that would like to speak on this item today? Mr. Bosworth, thanks for being here.
Can you hear me? Okay. Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Thank you, Commissioner Vanderwerf, for reading that proclamation. About 10 years ago, I met a World War II vet. He was a combat medic like me, and he survived it. And so I was honored to meet that guy. And so today I'm thinking of him. And I appreciate you guys honoring those veterans that survived Normandy and did not survive Normandy, and after 80 years not forgetting this. Because it's important that we remember this history, and hopefully we don't repeat it. So today I just want to say thank you for remembering the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak on this proclamation? Feel free to come forward and just introduce yourself. Okay. Thank you for being here. All right, with that, I will bring it to the commissioners for comments. Commissioner Williams.
Yes, I can say that I'm going to do some research one of these days. I did want to bring up my two uncles, Leonel Brown and Marion Brown, both participated in World War II. One of these days I will find out whether or not they were on the beaches of Normandy. they were more likely to be involved in the world, in the war in the Pacific against Japan, since they were both from Utah. Those are memories they don't speak about, or they didn't speak about while they were alive. They're obviously passed away long ago. And it's just always an honor for me to have family members who participated in World War II and were able to free Europe from the oppression of the Nazis. Thank you.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate this being brought forward, and this proclamation is remembered both those who passed away and those who survived D-Day and what they did in turning the tide and reclaiming Europe, free in Europe, and what needs to be done when times get tough for men, women, countries to stand up and do what's right, and they did. And so just remembering them is a great opportunity to do so. I did want to highlight that the one event that I do know is going on, commemoration on Thursday, 11 o'clock at Fort Carson. I believe it's their main gate. Fort Carson just off of 115, 11 o'clock on Thursday. That's the one event I know that's going on as a commemoration, and so would highlight to anybody that's available to go out there and help remember these this great generation. So thank you.
Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate the opportunity to take the time to remember this event, the folks who participated in this event. Thank you so much for coming and sharing that, because it is personal. It's still personal for so many. I had an opportunity to reflect quite a bit on this proclamation over the weekend, and also about patriotism and the state of our military, the state of our nation, and why it is so important to remember what has happened in our history. I think that when we look back on World War II and we think about the effects on our nation, it was very different than the modern wars that we participate in. It is so much more impactful, I think, to everyone at home as well. And I think there was a lot of focus. And now I definitely feel like we've been more insulated as a population. And I think that has affected how we think about what our service members have to endure. Obviously, D-Day was one of the most impactful and tragic and also heroic parts of our history. But I think it's important to remember it because we have to think about it in context too of our entire nation, our entire military. The bravery that was required on those beaches, I cannot fathom. And it's so important because I look at our servicemen and women today, and I am so grateful for what they do, but we have to remember the reality of what war is. We have to have a lethal military because it is what keeps us all safe. And I begin to worry about not focusing on that and how we dishonor those who came and served, lost their lives, and endured incredible things that most of us will never be able to understand. And the way that I think we must honor them is to continue to be the nation that we are. I think that's incredibly important. I cannot thank those who have served and the families, and I also think about the difficulty from a personal level of having a family member deployed, having my husband deployed to Afghanistan. I can't imagine what it was like for families during this time period as well, without the type of communication, without necessarily, knowing, going days, weeks, without necessarily hearing from their loved one or knowing what was happening. So I do think that this is such an important thing for us to remember. Grateful Commissioner Vanderwerf sponsored this. Thank you to all who are here Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service to our veterans, who we need to continue to honor today. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I want to start off my comments by thanking Marshall Bosworth. Thank you for being you and running our Veteran Services Office in a way that shows ultimate respect to those veterans who have served, to their families, and clearly with an ability to connect and know your why. So thank you for having that on display for us today. I hope that anyone here who comes into contact with our Veteran Service Office knows that they're in great hands, and they have great comrades right there as well. You know, I too spent some time reflecting on this weekend, and the most recent Netflix binge that my husband and I watched was Band of Brothers. And the second episode of that is just a stunning portrayal of D-Day. And it reminded me that the greatest generation is not just a name that is given. It was earned. And I've had the opportunity to know just a few in my life of that greatest generation. I will never forget, as a 20-year-old, watching a county commission meeting and hearing Chuck Brown speak of that time. And his portrayal of that has stuck with me for 20 years as well. And I'm honored to sit in the same seat he once did. But the significance of D-Day must not be forgotten. The greatest generation stood up against tyranny to defend our nation and our world from evil men. Sadly, evil will always exist, and it's the job of every generation to fight that evil and to preserve the freedom and liberty. As we face threats today abroad from terrorist organizations and domestically even, with politicization of our judicial system, I hope that our generation rises to the challenge of protecting all that is good and preserving freedom and liberty for future generations. And boy, do we have some mighty combat boots to fill. Thank you for being here today, Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the opportunity to provide some comments. I also want to thank Marshall Bosworth for your comments. The pain of such events like this is sometimes just below the skin. It's always there. I also want to thank the American Legion and the VFW, not only for some of you folks being here today for this proclamation, but for everything that you do for veterans and to help Americans remember the sacrifices that we've made. And we have some amazing chapters of both organizations here in the Colorado Springs region. Now, my uncle served in World War II, and he was not in Europe. He was in the Pacific, but he was a tail gunner on B-36s. And fortunately, he survived the war. But I actually had relatives that were living in the Netherlands, distant relatives, and they were farmers on the western edge of the Netherlands. And unfortunately, Nazi Germany built a radar tower about 100 yards from my family's house. And in the bombing of Europe by the Allies, were successful at taking out the radio tower, but also took out my family's house and practically everybody in my family as well. So if we all study our family history, we find that all of us, one way or another, have sacrificed, and it really has an enormous amount of meaning. Now, another thing I got to do when I was active duty in the military is run the Air Force's Electronic Warfare Program Office. And it turned out that the largest mass use of electronic warfare in the history of mankind started on the D-Day invasion. The Allies took several airplanes, bombers, I think they were B-25s, and they put boat radars in those aircraft and then flew the aircraft in orbits over the English Channel, slowly moving those orbits to Calais, which fooled the Germans into believing that the main invasion, the main force of boats for the invasion, was in fact going to Calais and not to Normandy. This was a massive electronic warfare deception effort that actually was part of how this worked. Even having said that, you saw from the proclamation how many of our brave soldiers died. But after the initial D-Day invasion, where 2,400 were killed, the battle for Normandy that came after that was truly amazing, truly terrible. In the battle for Normandy, after the D-Day invasion, 73,000 more were killed, a massive number, and 153,000 were wounded. Now, this operation used 5,000 ships and had the goal of putting 150,000 people on that beach, on those beaches. It was a massive undertaking that required an immense amount of detailed planning. One of the most sophisticated operations in the history to that date, a history of warfare to that date. And there was, in fact, had been getting ready, stationed in England, over 2 million soldiers from 10 countries that once the beachhead was established, were going to pour into Europe and establish a second major front on the West to defeat Nazi Germany. What an amazing story. A story of grief and power, a story of good over evil. Really was an amazing day, and I'm very, very grateful for every soldier, every person that participated in making that day successful, because it was a key event that helped to ensure that we stayed free. Now, when I was active duty in the military, I served in Europe during the Cold War. I was there from 1987 to 1989. But I took some time to go visit the beaches of Normandy and also the grave sites. And those are very moving events, and they're very well maintained. My thanks to the French for doing that. Thousands of soldiers with crosses. And these locations are really special places. If you get to go to Europe, I would encourage you to go to Normandy and go and see both where these battles took place, but also go to the grave sites and reminisce and look at, you can see it, the enormity of the sacrifice that took place on that day by going to these places. And if you've been to them already, I know that you already know what I'm talking about. So again, I want to thank everybody for being here. I am so proud of this Board of County Commissioners to do this proclamation. I appreciate that in our discussions we decided, this was important to do, and I'm glad that we've done it so that we can remember those that sacrificed so much so that we can be free. And those are my comments, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And once again, I will point out that we have fewer and fewer of the greatest generation here today to share these stories with us, which brings us to the point of why we still do this proclamation, so that we can not only honor those who gave their lives, recognize also those who survived, but that the story lives on and that our children and our grandchildren know the sacrifices that were made. So thank you very much, Commissioner Vanderwerf, for sponsoring. With that, any final comments from commissioners? I'll call the roll. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Geithner.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That passes 5-0. Is there a desire to do a photo today? Okay, we'll take a brief recess to do that. Welcome back to the Tuesday, June 4th Board of County Commission meeting. We are now on item number 8.
Item number 8 is comments by elected officials and commissioner liaison reports. 8A, introduction of the voter information portal, EPC, VIP, and election update. Steve Schleicher, clerk and recorder.
Mr. Schleicher.
Good morning, Commissioners. Steve Schleicher, El Paso County Clerk and Recorder. I have two very short presentations that I want to share with you today. A lot of busyness is happening in the office, but before I get to those, what I would like to do is introduce one of my new staff that started yesterday. His name is Quinn Ritzdorf. He's going to be working in our PIO doing all the public information. So I stole him from KRDO, and he just joined us yesterday. So Quinn, welcome, sir. So Blake, if you could go ahead and pull up the 2024 June 25th primary election, please, sir. So commissioners, yesterday we went ahead and mailed out over 450,000 ballots. And with that, we sat there, every registered Republican is going to be receiving a Republican primary ballot. Every registered Democrat is going to be receiving a Democratic primary ballot. And of course, in accordance with Colorado law, our registered unaffiliated are going to be receiving both the Republican and also the Democrat ballot. But with that being said, is the unaffiliated can only vote one ballot. And as I shared with you as we were talking about the breakdown of our March 5th presidential primary, is we had over 2,000 unaffiliated voters that cast both ballots and their vote did not count at that time. So we are working extremely hard to educate our unaffiliated where they can only vote one ballot. So as shared, yesterday was a busy day. Today, the office is filled. Of course, staff is running around, and we have a lot of election judges. And this morning, our judges are now visiting all of our healthcare facilities. So if you did not know, we visit those healthcare facilities to personally deliver the ballot to our seniors that are in those facilities and allow them to vote and deposit their ballot in a secure ballot box and bring it back as well. So let's talk about some of the do's for this election week and some of the don'ts. So as we know, Colorado is a same-day registration, so this is the crucial step. If a voter is yet to register, there's a number of ways they could go about doing that. Going out to the Secretary of State's website, going out to my website, or if they want to go ahead and vote in person, they can also visit one of our voter service polling centers, VSPC locations during this election. In addition to that is if there are any questions, voters can reach out to me at 719-575-VOTE if they have any concerns, questions. One thing I will share is here in El Paso County, many of our voters probably were notified that their ballot was in the mail stream. You should be receiving that here soon. So some of the voters will get their ballot. They got it yesterday and or today. Some will not be receiving it until probably Thursday and Friday. The reason for that is a number of our citizens, their mail goes up to Denver, it's reprocessed, and then comes right back down the highway and is distributed at that time. So that is really confusing to a lot of voters here in the community. And the reason why is because everybody's on social media. They're talking to family members or friends going, hey, I got my ballot yesterday. However, a family member or friend would be like, I still have yet to receive mine. What I do recommend is if a voter does not receive their ballot by this next Monday, please call our office. We have a new program, as I shared with you commissioners, a new MARS system where I and my staff can track your ballot the moment it is printed, inserted, deposited in the USPS, transit all the way here to El Paso County, and then dropped in the mailbox. So if a voter wants to find out where that ballot is at, we can share that information with them and or provide them a replacement. Do know the deadlines. Election day is Tuesday, June 25th. If you are going to be using the mail service to return your ballot, please have that in the mail on or before June 17th, because postmarks are not accepted, and we have to have all ballots received by 7 p.m. on Election Day. The other thing is we sat there and talked about is we have redone our instruction page to also serve as a secrecy sleeve. So if a voter wants to go ahead and use that, please do. The other thing is also sign up for ballot tracks. That also allows you to know when your ballot has been returned, has been counted, and things like that. Here are some don'ts. Again, unaffiliated voters, vote one ballot. Don't ignore your signature requirements. And this is something where we, as the elections department in the clerk and recorder's office and our bipartisan judges, we go through every signature on every envelope. Some of the things that happen is where voters do not sign the envelope, and we have to reach out to them to come on and to cure that. Or we have voters who will sit there and try to save postage where the husband and wife will sit there and put both ballots in one envelope, and that cannot be accepted. So we reached out to them to come cure the ballot as well. Don't ignore the postage. So again, the deadline for that is Monday, June 17th to ensure your ballot is received on or before Election Day. And don't wait till the last minute to cast your ballot. I and my staff in the elections department, we are predicting probably a very busy primary here on June 25th, also leading up to our November election. Some voter reminders is we're going to have 9 voter service and polling centers, VSPCs, open throughout the county. And per Colorado law, we have to have a VSPC in each one of our motor vehicle branches. So we are going to be out there at Fort Carson, Powers, CSC, and our Union Town Center. And as you can see, we're also going to be at City of Fountain Utilities, Meridian Ranch Rec Center, Monument Public Works. But what also is different, because we are also coordinating another election, which is the Congressional District 4 vacancy election, which basically we got about 6,200 voters that are east of Calhan and also east of Yoder going out to the county line that are going to be participating in that vacancy election. So we actually opened up a VSPC out at the county fairgrounds in Swink Hall. So I thank our parks director and also the fair staff to allow us to use that as a VSPC. As you can see, we're going to be open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday, June 4th. And the VSPCs are going to be opening up in phases. But on Election Day, we will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I provided a map of our VSP locations for you. And we also have 39 secure ballot drop boxes. We turned our cameras on. Citizen in El Paso County can go out there and take a look at the ballot box in their neighborhood, or if they want to watch all 39 ballot boxes. So again, we're the only clerk's office that provides that live streaming of the ballot box footage here in the state of Colorado. And here's all the ballot box locations. So let's talk about results release. So the unofficial election results will be released only after all VSPCs have closed and the very last person in line at each location has cast their vote. So as in any election, and due to the potential of high in-person voting and the possibility of long lines at vote centers at 7 p.m., is we all should expect the first set of results to be released around 7:30 on election night. And we will sit there and continuously provide updates each and every hour. So how to find the results is through the Colorado Secretary of State provides 2 methods, or you can go out to the Clerk and Recorder's website to get those results as well. So are there any questions in regards to our June 25th election?
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. First question I have is, you mentioned it briefly, but I'm not sure I caught it. When is the bulk of the ballots going to be actually arriving at residencies? Is it Wednesday?
So, Commissioner, some actually were received yesterday.
Really? Okay.
So we were out there 7:30 yesterday morning at the Fountain Distribution Center on Fountain Boulevard. So we basically did a transfer of the chain of custody where we basically took all of the information and verified the locks, cut the locks for our records, and ballots were being processed as they were coming off the truck at 8 o'clock yesterday morning. So some have already been delivered yesterday. A lot will be delivered today, but most folks that are north of Woodman, those ballots are going up to Denver, being rerouted and come back down, and they will probably be delivered Thursday or Friday.
Okay, thank you very much. And then the next question I have is, with ballot tracks, I think signing up is a great thing for everybody to do, but I do have a question. If you sign up with ballot tracks, does that remain as a good sign-up election after election, or do you need to sign up for every election?
No, Commissioner. In fact, once you sign up, you're in there as long as you're still on the active voter roll.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you. Really appreciate this presentation. As you know, in the last election, we had quite a bit of discussion around delivery of those ballots. I am a little disappointed. I have not heard back from USPS about the ultimate tracking and results. I really appreciate your office making sure that those replacement ballots were sent. I've heard several of my neighbors expressing concern already this year, saying hopefully I get my ballot this time around. So I know those VSPCs are incredibly important. Can you remind us, if someone does not get that ballot, how they request a replacement ballot?
Absolutely, Commissioner. That is a great point. And I will share with you is we are now on weekly meetings with the USPS in my office, which also includes a lot of other clerk and recorders, to the importance of being an all mail-in ballot state. So if a voter does not receive their ballot by Monday, please call our office at 719-575-VOTE. Again, we can sit there and identify through the new MARS system where that ballot is. In addition to that, if they request a replacement. So we can actually take care of that to ensure everybody gets their ballot and they get it cast before 7 p.m. on election night. Thank you.
Other questions, commissioners? Excellent, thank you.
Okay, so going into the next one, Blake, if you can go ahead and pull up the new voter information portal. And I do know our vendor is online as well. Her name is Helen McNulty. And if I could go ahead and have my GIS manager come up as well. So commissioners, this is a pretty big deal. We are the first in the country to provide this type of technology to our voters here in El Paso County. And I do know that Helen is online, and she and I have been working on this project ever since I became the El Paso County Clerk and Recorder. So what this is a new voter information portal. I'm going to go into a little bit of the details of what this is, why I think it's a great idea, and also why it now makes El Paso County nearly fully transparent when it comes to our elections. And then I'm going to have my IS manager, Carl, do a quick demo. So I want to talk about the purpose and strategy of this site, the transparency, the informational and educational purposes of it, the platform and its essential elements, some common mistakes that we have worked very hard on to avoid. We're going to do a demo, questions, and then let you guys get back to your board meeting, because we're going to go live with this site today once we get back to the office. So the purpose and strategy of the new EPC VIP site revolved around several key factors, which is one, a clear purpose, the content, design, security, speed, a solid foundation, the website goals, and a plan. I feel, as the clerk, an effective website design fulfills its intended purpose by conveying its message and engaging the visitors, citizens of El Paso County, and guiding them to act, which is one thing I did when I was the former county assessor, which you all know now gets hit over 49 million times a year. Transparency. This is extremely critical. This election website transparency is a crucial aspect of ensuring free and fair elections here in El Paso County. Our new portal emphasizes that transparency is key to deterring misinformation and ensuring free and fair elections here in El Paso County. So remember, transparency in an election helps establish the trust and the public confidence in the process, as voters in El Paso County now have the means to verify the results are accurate reflection of the will of the people here in El Paso County. Information and educational. So our new site is informational for several reasons. One, transparency and visibility, efficient ballot box and VSPC management, resource allocation, wait time management in our VSPCs, also bringing in geocoding and accuracy validation, which is extremely important because we want to make sure citizens are voting in the right districts that they reside in. And we all know that we all vote on many different things. Not all citizens reside in Commissioner District 2, so there's a select number of voters that are allowed to vote in that race. And we also know we got 17 different school districts where many of us in this community, vote on School District 11 issues or School District 20. So all of our ballots are different, so we need to ensure geocoding and accuracy for every voter is validated. Platform and essential elements. Having a robust and effective platform for our new site is crucial for several reasons. Accuracy and reliability. When it comes to elections, I believe that our citizens, there is no room for error when it comes to our elections. User experience, transparency and trust, data integration, real-time decision-making, accessibility, security, and scalability. So some of the common stakes that my team and I worked on and worked very hard with the vendor to avoid is incomplete or inaccurate GIS data. We all know that we went through a recent commissioner redistricting, so we needed to make sure we had all of that information up to date. Whatever precincts were split, that was included in this information. Ignoring continuity and compactness rules, lack of geocoding strategy, insufficient contextual layers, and inadequate data validation processes. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Carl to give everybody a quick demonstration of what is getting ready to go out live to our citizens.
Thank you. I'm sorry if my face brings anybody trauma from our redistricting process that we went through previously. And while there's a lot of Air Force representation, Steve and I will represent the Jarheads here today as Marines. So this, something to note as we open up our VIP site here is that this is something that we wanted to implement for this election since it is a very important election. However, it is not nearly as large in scale as the general election that will be. So we wanted to put this out there in a little bit smaller scale election so that we can have some lessons learned that we can bring forward to the presidential election as well. So what you see here is what is complete at the moment, but there are going to be features that are added along the way as we receive feedback from elected officials, from citizens, and as we get closer to the next election. So when citizens or anyone who goes to the site brings it up, it ends up bringing a search box that can be closed at any time if anybody just wants to skip past this part. But what it allows us to do is enter in our address. If I just do a random address, what this is pulling from is the assessor's database as well. So if anybody's been to the assessor's My Community site, they'll notice that this looks pretty familiar. So if I pull up an address here, an old address of mine. What that's going to do is it's going to take us straight to the precinct that we're in. What this will do is it'll answer the question right away if a citizen is wondering what precinct they're in. Not a lot of citizens know exactly what precinct they're in. By putting in their address, this will take them right to it. Kind of let them know what the geographic location looks like. What you'll notice on the left-hand side here is we've got some tabs. The first tab is voter registration. What we have an indication here of is the specific precinct that is selected. It gives the feedback to the voter on different voter registration statistics that they can review. We also have the ability to hover over our precincts here that are surrounding if they want to zoom out a bit and just see some comparisons in the other precincts. And they also have the ability, if someone were to be looking at multiple precincts, the data on the left there will update. If I hold control and I select multiple precincts, I can get feedback on if I'm just looking at this area, what is the active voter count and breakdown by party, by gender, by age. I have that feedback as well. So if I clear my selection here, we're zoomed out to countywide, and the default view that voters will see will be the countywide statistics. So that just gives a view of the county and all the precincts within, and then the countywide statistics on the left there for voter registration. So voter turnout, this is something, once we begin having more ballots come in and we have more information to process, this section will be updated with the current election. So the default election that will be up top there will be the 2024 June election. And that will be providing voters feedback on ballot returns and voter turnout at the county level, as you can see, and then down to the precinct level as well. But as you can also see, the voters can choose previous elections. At this point, this goes back to the 2023 election. Steve had decided that he would like to start this on elections that he was clerk on to go forward. So we have 2023, 2024 presidential primary here as well. And as we switch between elections, you'll see that that data updates for us so that we have countywide turnout. But like voter registration, we do have the ability to zoom in on precincts, and we can select a precinct, and we can see what that precinct's turnout is and have breakdown in data just like we did on voter registration. So we also have the ability to hover here so that we can see what the quick turnout is on surrounding precincts. We've also been able to integrate a map layer for each of these elections that we have loaded in here that will give a visual feedback to voters to see what the turnout rate is broken down by precinct. Of course, as you go more red, there's less turnout. As you go more dark green, there's more turnout. So if you switch between elections, you end up getting that visual feedback if you're a more visual person that just wants to see if there's areas of interest that they would like to look at. So, and I'll try to do this as fast as I can. I know we don't have a ton of time, but the next piece is going to be pretty crucial. This is probably going to hit most people that are interested in this site during an election is, as we were talking about earlier, if there's questions about I didn't get my mail ballot and I want to make sure that I know where I can go in order to find out where I can get a replacement or where I can vote in person, or if I have my mail ballot and where I can drop things off. This next piece, I gotta turn off our map layer. This next piece allows voters to enter in their address. And so that zooms into the parcel that they're looking for. And from there, as you'll see down below here, you have the ability to find your nearest ballot drop box. What that does is it gives a quick directions, a visual direction to the right there. Down below, you also have directions that displays out for you, turn by turn directions. You also have a view. This is just an image that comes from our camera system of that ballot box. And then you have the ability to select a button here that brings you to the ballot box right now. So this is a time-lapse picture that was just taken here just a couple minutes ago, 10:15 or so, 10:14. But it allows voters, when you're on one of these cameras, you can scroll through the different events on the camera. Every 15 minutes, there's time-lapse pictures that occur on these cameras so that we have images in place that we can zoom in and look at what's happening around the camera. We also have triggered events that occur on these cameras as well. So as we come across, there's not a lot of action happening over at Rampart right now, but as we come across different triggered events that occur, we can also get a playback of that event. You can also go to the live view to see the live stream of that camera. That said, that's for if people want to drop off their ballot. If someone wants to go to a vote center and either get a mail ballot replacement or vote in person or just drop off their mail ballot there, they also have the ability to go to check their vote center, what the nearest vote center to the address that they entered. This gives a breakdown of the name, of course, and then the open hours of that vote center, and then a breakdown of directions as well. So another piece of this platform that we end up receiving from Spatialist, this isn't something that the county produces data from, but they get from the Census Bureau, is like we saw in redistricting, the ability to have population feedback and census feedback. And what this does is like on the assessor site, you end up having zoomed in areas. Whatever area that you're in, you get feedback that is updated in real time on population. So that's something that this might look familiar to us before as we looked at that through redistricting that gives a breakdown of demographics and education level, median household income, stuff like that. The map layer tab lets us go through, what's going on here? Lets us have the ability to look at El Paso County districts that fall within our border. So if we're looking at House districts, or if we're looking at Senate districts, incorporated cities, municipalities, if people wanted to look at these boundaries and be able to change the opacity of that, and then of course have like a precinct layer on there so that they can kind of take a look at what some of these boundaries look like, and then maybe go back and forth to, let's say if we're just looking at school districts here, and we want to have, or if let's say Senate districts. Let's say we're looking at some district boundaries that we're interested in. We'll zoom in here to Senate District 10, and then we also want to see what that 2024 presidential primary turnout is. That's something that we'll probably have to talk with the vendor about, maybe making this a little bit darker, but this is something that we'll be working on to make sure that it's something that can be a tool for people to hopefully have different layers that they can add onto the map and use to have some immediate visual feedback on previous elections and current elections for turnout. Another thing that I forgot to mention is we also have, uncheck that, in terms of voter registration and turnout, we have a search by capability up here in the upper right. For example, if we were to choose Commissioner District 2 and we wanted to highlight all of the precincts within that county commissioner district. This is a question that we got a lot of feedback from the public, from commissioners, from everybody who really wanted to be able to go somewhere and just have active voter information or voter turnout information for certain elections. This allows you to select districts that encompass entire precincts, which House, Senate, and commissioner districts now do. That's an important part of that redistricting process. So at any time, a voter can come and check any of these districts and have that feedback on the left there of active voter information. If they were to flip over to the voter turnout, it also fills out the voter turnout information as well. So for the 2024 presidential primary, if somebody's interested in looking at Senate District 11 here, they can get feedback for those precincts to see what their Senate, how their Senate district turned out for an election. That's the quick version of this. I think I've covered everything.
Do we have any questions? No questions.
So commissioners, the other thing is we will sit there and be providing nightly updates as we sit there and we start getting returned ballots. So one of the goals is, as folks wanted to know, plus the media, is what is the nightly return, what's going on. So we're going to sit there where a citizen will be able to go in here and look at a particular precinct. So for example, precinct 104, they'll sit there and say, you know, by June 10th, 17% of active voters have already cast their ballot. So we're going to be sitting there providing those updates to the citizens, our major and minor parties, and, you know, and also to our media as well. I do know that our vendor, Helen, is on. Is she still on, Blake? Yeah. Helen, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, no, I'm here. Daniel's here too, from Australia. So you've got me here from Ireland and Daniel on from Australia. So Daniel worked a good bit on it, but no, just looking good and glad to see it being demoed there. Carl did a good job. Daniel just messaged me and said we should get Carl showing this all to all the other counties. So we appreciate the opportunity to work with you, and we're excited to serve the El Paso County citizens with this easy to use, easy to access information.
Absolutely. Well, Helen, you and Daniel did an amazing job. So, you know, with that being said, is, you know, when I reached out and had this idea, and again with being the first in the nation and definitely here in the state of Colorado, there's no doubt other clerks are going to be looking at this platform and feeling the same way that I do, is that this is absolutely going to be a wonderful tool each and every election that we go through, but also it adds a full transparency that it would be out there where we get nightly reports that we're going to be pushing out on this site each and every night. But not only with Daniel and Helen's help that have been really working on this, is the yeoman's work really has been Carl and Sydney. And I know they look pretty familiar when we did our redistricting, but commissioners, they have done an amazing job to get this up and going prior to our June 25th primary.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This looks like a great tool. Just a couple, maybe a quick question is, at the end of an election cycle, does this tool give the final numbers as well? And at some point, is there going to be something displayed on the screen that says certified as final numbers or something to that effect?
Absolutely, Commissioner. And one thing we're also going to be looking at, so you will definitely see the final certified results from that particular election. But what we're continually working on this with our vendor and my team is we also want to break down where you can go into particular races. So we are currently working on pushing that data out there where, you know, if citizens wanted to find out, how did Commissioner District 3 vote on Prop HH? So we're going to have loaded the individual questions moving forward from the 2023 coordinated to the March 5th presidential primary, June 25th, and moving forward. So that way citizens will have that history.
Great, and that actually related a little bit to my second question, which is what historical data for voting do you have on here? You talked about Proposition HH as a historical data that is yet to be done, but you're intending on doing it. But is there any historical data at present in this database?
So what we ended up doing, Commissioner, to ensure this was launched to provide updates of each precinct of ballots cast, really we're just looking at, since I have been clerk, the November 2023 to the March 5th, but we plan on loading all the historical that we have on the website currently to put that out there. But right now, just to get the information from our most recent elections, is we're going to be sitting there loading that information, and I believe that's in work right now.
Okay, so there's no historical at the moment. What it's being used for is the current elections.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments or questions? I just want to thank you for committing to the transparency of elections, and really the county as a whole is really committed to transparency. So it's great to see our independently elected officials also subscribe to that and put it in real practical ways that demonstrate that commitment to transparency. The other thing I wanted to point out, just from having worked elections since I was wee little, and the way that you used to have to request reports. Now that I understand the mechanics of what happens in your office as an election is being run, I have to imagine that this also will allow your staff to focus on the mechanics of running a great election, as opposed to those constant requests from campaigns for the nightly or daily or weekly reports. So I'm glad to see that there's also some efficiencies in there that will really allow for better running of the office. I think it's a great thing. Thank you.
Commissioner, that is a really good point. Many of the campaigns and or candidates, during an election time will sit there and want a lot of this information. And historically, they have paid for it. Where if they want a large district map, or if they want a particular map of the county as a whole, where the campaigns and candidates came in and paid for it, well, they no longer have to do that. This information is at their fingertips, it's free, and they're able to go ahead and print that information out for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Thank you very much. Thanks for your patience. Okay. We are still on item number 8, and we'll move on to commissioner comments, seeing no other countywide elected officials in the room or online. Commissioner Williams.
I just wanted to thank several staff and some commissioners here for their support. My brother had a massive heart attack 10 days ago. He's still alive. It's a very roller coaster situation. We do not know if he's going to make it or not. And so I just wanted to take the time to thank you for especially Brett and Kenny and Jenny and Ingrid and Nate Whitney for their incredible support during this time, making sure that everyone who needed to know knew. And we'll just get through it. We'll see another week and we'll see where we're at. It's a day-by-day thing. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Williams, thank you for being here today. Family first always, but thank you to your commitment here. Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. First off, my thoughts and prayers go out to Commissioner Williams and your family. I hope that all goes well. We all have those challenges in our families from time to time, and it's your turn, of course. With regard to things that I'll be doing for this week before we get to our next board meeting, I've got some events tonight. One of those is actually the naming activity for the amphitheater that I'll be going to. And then tomorrow, I'm going to be on a horse at the token presentation, and hopefully that will go well. And last time I did that, it was so much fun. There were 2 horses, and it was Mayor John Suthers and I. And one horse, I don't remember the horses' names. One had the name something like Peanuts, and the other one had the name something like Fireball. And unfortunately, I got the horse named Fireball, and I thought that would be a problem, but it turned out Fireball was the tamer horse than the horse called Peanuts. So it all worked out really well. Also, I will be going to the June 6th D-Day event at Fort Carson on Thursday the 6th. I'm looking forward to that. Again, it'll be another solemn event. And I believe we have a CSU State of the Utilities activity that's also on Thursday afternoon. I'll be going to that as well. And then just on a personal note, my church is holding its Feast of St. Arnold, a beer festival run by a church, but it actually raises money for charities, and that's going to be this Saturday on the 8th. And that has always been a lot of fun. Our church over the last decade has raised $500,000 for charities. So it's done a lot of great work. And then on Monday morning, I'll be participating in the state's Homeland Security Advisory Committee meeting, which I participate on. I'm an appointee to that board from CCI. And then that'll bring us to next Tuesday for our next Board of County Commissioners meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just want to start off by highlighting the last week that we did participate in the Colorado Counties Incorporated, our statewide conference. And so I thought that was very valuable in getting to meet with the other county commissioners in person and, reviewing a lot of what has been going on for the year, and then a lot of the legislative updates and bills that have been passed or defeated. This week we do have the Western, as mentioned, Western Heritage, the street breakfast token presentation. I'll attend that as well. I believe that's tomorrow, Thursday. Again, the Fort Carson 80th D-Day commemoration. Friday, I have my State Board of Veteran Affairs meeting that I will participate in as well. And as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, it was before, clearly we didn't have a meeting last week because of the conference. I did highlight my concern in identifying some issues with a needle exchange that had been opened in El Paso County in Colorado Springs, where I believe no county local elected official was even aware of this. Once I found out about it, I inquired with the state CDPHE on it. I asked them, I sent a CORA request. CORA request was very simple. Could you pass me the emails, texts, communications, documented communications from the organization regarding either needle exchanges or their what's supposed to be a mandated stakeholder meetings. I received a response from CDPHE saying they had no information and that this closed out the request, the good faith effort at answering my question. So I responded back to them and to the director of CDPHE, Jill Hunsaker Ryan. Asked the director, well, since you have no communications or documentation regarding this issue, why did you add the needle exchange to your state website that they were operating in Colorado Springs? That of course, I believe caused some panic, and I received a direct email from the director saying that, oh, we learned of CHN's, as Colorado Health Network's, planned expansion into El Paso County with CHN staff. Discussions or communications. So I'm trying to understand what kind of communication that was. A phone call, you met with them. I don't understand how you have no documentation on that. And if you have no documentation, how you could just accept a phone call or a meeting with somebody without any documentation. So in a follow-up email, they responded back, well, the law does not give CDPHE the authority to regulate or investigate syringe access programs operations. And I received that response from Dr. Ned Kalange, the Chief Medical Officer for CDPHE. And so again, I responded back, thank you for your email. And so I asked if you don't have regulatory or investigative oversight of needle exchanges in the state, could you pass me the contact information for the department at the state who does regulate or investigate syringe? Because I have explained, I believe, that this needle exchange is operating illegally based on the information I have received or not received, that mandates that they were supposed to have held stakeholder meetings prior to beginning operations as stated in state statute, and that same state statute names the stakeholders. One of the mandatory stakeholders is the district attorney, who has publicly stated he has not participated. So again, I have alleged, I guess, I still need to confirm this, but I think I have confirmed it with the DA saying he did not participate, that they are operating illegally. And so in response to my question, asking who's in charge of the state, I of course received a response from Dr. Ned Kalange, the Chief Medical Officer from CDPHE. The answer to your question is that no state agency regulates needle exchange programs. Now I go back to a report, I'll follow up next week, but I think that's just enough so you understand my frustrations that potentially we have operations of a needle exchange operating illegally outside of the bounds of the law, and the state CDPHE is telling me nobody can investigate this. So I apparently, Colorado Springs mayor and chief and police may have to investigate. I've already sent out an email to the mayor asking him to investigate, but I'm very disappointed that there is no oversight of something that many people would probably believe needs to be at least looked at, especially when I see the state trying to request and operate, or several legislatures have been asking to expand these type of things into, what are they called, the drug injection, safe injection site, which to me doesn't make any sense, but can you imagine if they started operating safe injection sites and they also have the same no regulation or investigative authorities? So very disturbing. I think people should be investigating at a greater level than has currently gone on. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you. I first wanted to say to Commissioner Gonzalez, thank you so much for the work that you're doing on this. I think it's incredibly important and shocking, and at the same point, only marginally surprising, considering that the state would like to regulate everything that you all do, what kind of electricity you use in your house, what kind of cars you're using. They'd like to regulate all those things for you, but not something as serious as needles being dispensed into our community. It's quite shocking, but in line with where our state has been headed, unfortunately. But I think the work that you're doing is very important, and I look forward to seeing the response. And I hope that the mayor of Colorado Springs will take this seriously, because I do think that there are potentially grave impacts to our community. And I think that it's incredibly important that we use data-driven practices, and we look at the concerns that this type of, and they're not exchanges, and I've said this before, they're not exchanges, they're giveaways. They're no longer a place where you're given a clean needle and a dirty needle has to come back, and the intent of that is to keep dirty needles off the street. Now they're just needles given away, which means they're in our streets, they're in our parks, and that's very concerning to me. I do have a water authority meeting tomorrow morning. I will spend the remainder of the rest of the week meeting with constituents. I want to wish Commissioner Vanderwerf the best of luck on horseback tomorrow. Last year I had the opportunity to participate in that ceremony, and I had another horse kick my horse. Luckily, I had a bit of experience on horseback and when I was younger, and it seems like a little bit like riding a bicycle. It kicked in, and as I jokingly say, I did not die. So that was about, it was a little scary, but, and so it's an adventure here at the commission sometimes, and I wish you the best of luck. Hopefully you come back safely, all in one piece.
Thank you, Commissioner. With that, I also have a busy week. Several of the things have been mentioned. I will also, in addition to those things mentioned by my colleagues, I will be welcoming a group of interns and young professionals for their summer program here called Welcome COS. Many of you may know that before that program existed in formality, I also found my way to Colorado Springs and to El Paso County via an internship program from Georgia, and decided in that summer that this was where I wanted to live and work and raise a family and continue to impact the community. So happy to welcome another really impressive bunch of young professionals to explore Colorado Springs and everything El Paso County has to offer this summer. That is later this week. With that, you've heard me talk enough today, and we will, any other final commissioner comments before moving on to item number 9?
Item number 9 is community service organization reports, and there are none.
Item 10.
Item number 10 is public comment on items not scheduled on the agenda. This is the public's opportunity to speak on an item that is not scheduled on today's agenda. And Madam Chair, we did have one person sign in, Mr. Jeff Svensson, here to speak.
Excellent, thank you. Please introduce yourself for the record again, and you'll have 3 minutes. Thanks for being here today.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jeff Svensson, and together with my wife, Julie, I've operated the oldest licensed medical marijuana dispensary in El Paso County. As an aside, I had 3 uncles that served in World War II, one of whom bailed out of his burning B-17 and landed to safety only to be, apparently, to be lynched, or they were trying to lynch him, the German citizens, and he was saved by the Luftwaffe, spent the last year in a concentration camp. My father is a combat veteran of the Korean War, and my wife is a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution. The federal government's about to change the classification of marijuana. And we would like to be able to sell retail, or as some people call it, recreational marijuana in our dispensary on the east side of Colorado Springs. I think it's time to stop the monopoly that Manitou Springs currently has, the duopoly of the 2 stores there. The tax revenue that they've brought in the last 10 or so years has totally rejuvenated Manitou Springs. I suggest that we allow retail marijuana to be sold in unincorporated El Paso County, which is probably just me, and also introduce an 8% excise tax, which you can do. And I would suggest you give it to the El Paso County Sheriff's Department. They've been a boon to me. They've come to various incursions into my store over the last 14 years, and they have treated us with respect and been there very quickly. So the federal government, if you don't know, there's a 280E tax provision. We can't expense regular business expenses like utilities labor, rent. And so we paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional taxes to the federal government. They take it from us, but they also punish us for the 280E thing that they have in the tax code. So that's basically all I wanted to bring up. I think that we paid our dues for the last 14 years. We've been a good business, paid our taxes. We're proud of the fact that we've serviced thousands of veterans with PTSD and other problems that have arisen from their service. We respect this country, and we respect and we're proud of our own heritage. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public wishing to address anything not on today's agenda? Okay, and none online. Thank you. Okay. Item 11.
Item number 11 is the called up consent calendar, and there are no items called up today.
Okay, and before we move on to item number 12, which I will ask those presenting for item number 12 to be ready to present after we take a very, very brief break so that we can hear this item in full in one shot. We're in recess. Good morning and welcome back to the Tuesday, June 4th Board of County Commission meeting. We are now on item number 12.
Item number 12 is the sketch plan, Southern Colorado Rail Park Sketch Plan, a request by EDWC Levy Co., doing business as Schmidt Construction Incorporated, for approval of a sketch plan consisting of 3,108.9 acres to develop a commercial, light, and heavy industrial park with a new rail spur from the existing CSU rail located at the Ray Nixon Power Plant property to the eastern boundary of the Fort Carson military installation. The property is located south of Charter Oak Ranch Road and west of I-25. The item was heard on the regular agenda at the May 16, 2024 Planning Commission hearing and recommended for approval with a vote of 9-0. There is no opposition to the request. Parcel numbers 66,000,000,030, 040, 041, 046, 047, 048, 004, 008, 009, 010 and 011 and 012 and 014, respectively. Commissioner District Number 4, file number SKP 234, Carrie Parsons, Senior Planner, Planning and Community Development.
Thank you for making that reading as efficient as possible with all those parcel numbers. As Ms. Parsons is making her way forward, I believe Commissioner Gonzalez has a statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As this is a quasi-judicial matter before us, and because we want to make sure that we have transparent and unbiased, I've been recommended or advised to make a statement indicating that El Paso County has participated on this rail park oversight committee for several years. I have been the county commissioner who has served on this oversight committee for probably a good 6.5 years, 7 years almost. I have not expressed an opinion indicating how I may or vote on today's hearing. And I have very specifically, when this issue was brought up for this potential request for approval, I very specifically made comments that I would make no comments or have no discussions or participate in any discussions where this was brought up previously in the oversight committee. In case I recall any additional information that may have been stated that is not presented today, I will make that statement. However, I believe that everything being presented here is the information I did hear previously. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms. Parsons.
Good morning, Carrie. Good morning, Carrie Parsons with Planning and Community Development. Blake, I'm sorry, will you help me pull up that PDF? Thank you. All right, this is the Southern Colorado Rail Park Sketch Plan. Your review staff was myself and Ms. Durham with the Department of Public Works. I want to start out by stating that this project has been in discussion since 2014. In 2018, there was a memorandum of understanding with various stakeholders. Some of those stakeholders include El Paso County, as Commissioner Gonzalez mentioned, the City of Fountain, the City of Colorado Springs, the Greater Colorado Springs Chamber of Commerce, the Economic Development Court, and the Fort Carson Military Base. As Ms. Allred mentioned, Planning Commission did approve this item with 9-0. The highlights of the discussion have been provided to you in a staff memo that has been provided as your backup material, and there is still no opposition received by our department in between Planning Commission and this hearing. If there's anybody that does want to participate, if you could please email the address and we'll get you in the queue. The sketch plan is typically the first step in a multi-step process for land use and entitlements prior to the construction and development of the site. This project is fairly unique. The applicant intends if the sketch plan is approved, to submit a special district, Title 32, to El Paso County Planning and Community Development and the clerk to the board for this body's approval. And then if that is then approved, the applicant intends to annex into the city of Fountain most likely, and potentially there is another alternative that were not to come to fruition. More specifically, this request is just over 3,000 acres. It is a mix of land uses, commercial, industrial, future railroad right-of-way. There's some low-impact uses, some preservation areas along drainage ways. There is some miscellaneous land use to be determined as more specific development occurs in the area. Currently, the northern portion of the site is within the commercial airport district overlay. The airport did not have any concerns about the project. The applicant does intend to develop this in 4 phases, and there is an informal waiver of review of the annexation impact report. Staff is not looking on necessarily a vote, but more of a head nod direction for that. And if that is provided, staff then would request the city of Fountain to provide a formal letter directed to the board to request that formal waiver. Staff is recommending that to move the project along so that the applicant can continue to pursue their grant funding for this project in addition to that special district approval and eventually court date and then election. Is there any questions on that?
Are there any questions? Okay, I have just one quick clarifying one, and that is that in the process of putting together this application, I'm assuming that all the things we ask for in an annexation impact report are already contained in this kind of phase. Is that why it's recommended to be waived? We kind of know all the information that we typically do in an impact report?
Yes, Chairman. Actually, we have more information than we typically would get. We do have a master development drainage plan that has been approved by your DPW administrator, as well as the master traffic impact study. We also have several other reports in support of this application, such as soils and geology and other reports. So staff is confident that the information provided by the applicant is more detailed than we would typically get with an annexation impact report.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Really quickly, aerial oversight of the map. Here's the site, and you can see it's a fairly large site bound by Charter Oak Road to the north, Fort Carson to the north, to the west, and to the south. Colorado Springs Utilities here to the midway section and then to the east. Here you have the existing rail spur that serves the Ray Nixon power plant, and to the north and on the east you have the city of Fountain jurisdiction, and then the existing gravel pit, which is actually going to be proposed to be included in the last phase of development for this project area. The property is currently zoned I-3 on the northern half with that airport overlay, and then the southern half is rural residential 5 acres. Again, the city of Fountain has already annexed portions of the land to the east, and then there is this unknown pocket of city of Fountain land in the very center. We are not really sure how that came to be, but it is just there, and so we're working with it. The applicant has provided a sketch plan, so I want to just point out on the sketch plan, again, the detail of the existing rail line spur, and then phase 1 of the sketch plan would be the construction of this rail spur, providing redundancy to the Fort Carson military installation at the northeast boundary, both by railway and potentially by vehicular access. Additionally, then, the secondary rail spur through the industrial area of the park would be concluded in a latter phase of development. The applicant is going to go into great detail on their presentation, so I won't spend a lot of time here. In terms of the master plan, because this concept started in 2014, prior to the development of the county's Your Master Plan, we anticipated this coming, and so staff worked with the Planning Commission and the stakeholders during that master plan development, and we had cited this, anticipated this use, and we have identified this as an employment center, so this sketch plan is consistent with our current master plan. Again, it is also listed as a priority development 6 area, specifically the rail yard for Fort Carson, our current master plan. It is also known as new development in the master plan, again, supporting the proposed sketch plan as it is presented. In terms of drainage, the site is located within the Fountain Creek and Fort Carson drainage basins. Drainage basins fees would apply if they did stay inside of unincorporated El Paso County at final plat and did not annex into the city of Fountain, but we expect them to annex into the city of Fountain. Again, I mentioned that the master drainage development plan has already been approved. The applicant is showing several water quality and detention ponds within the 3,000-acre development area. And the flows discharge to an off-site fountain, the off-site Fountain Creek area. I should mention the applicant has agreed, if for some reason that this development did not annex into the city of Fountain or the alternative city of Colorado Springs, the applicant has agreed to submit more specific reports meeting a more specific criteria at later stages, such as a rezoning preliminary plan and those final plat applications. In terms of the traffic impact study, again, with phase 1 being the rail spur, we don't anticipate traffic other than those construction traffic. Phase 2, you'll see about 6,000 average trips and increasing, basically adding 1/3 increments with phase 2 and then phase 4. Again, if this were to stay inside of unincorporated El Paso County, those road impact fees would apply. However, because they're annexing out, those fees would not apply to unincorporated El Paso County. Analysis, I kind of already did this throughout my application, but staff does find that the application is consistent and does meet the approval criteria for the sketch plan. Staff has requested that head nod or direction from the board to provide direction to the city of Fountain with that letter, formal letter to this body on the annexation impact waiver. With that, I would like to answer any questions or ask for the applicants to come up and make a presentation.
Any further questions for Ms. Parsons? Okay.
So you're going to have to use this one, okay?
Roller ball?
Yep. Or just click down. Yep, thanks.
Good morning, Madam Chair, County Commissioners. My name is Steve Mullican. I'm a local attorney, and I have the pleasure of representing the applicant of the sketch plan, the Edward C. Levy Company. This is not the first time we've been before this board with this project, but it is the first time, and it's been a little bit of time, and it's the first time we've been before you as really a decision-making body on our sketch plan. So I'm going to try to be somewhat brief, but I want to make sure we give you all the information. It's hard for me to be brief on this. This is a great project, 3,100-acre site that we propose to develop as an industrial manufacturing site. Dual serve, both Class 1 railroads serve it, which is rare and a great thing. It's going to provide a much needed better access to Fort Carson, increasing their ability to deploy, making them more resilient, and bring manufacturing back to the United States and El Paso County, create an estimated 7,700 new jobs, higher paying jobs here. So I'm quite honestly jazzed about it. And it's hard for me to be brief, but I want to make sure that after the presentation, you know who you're dealing with, you know a little bit of the history of the project, and have the detail on the sketch plan. I spent 8 years on a school board, and I look back at that time, and I remember a couple projects I was involved with, which I took great pride in. One was a major remodel of our junior high, and I'm hoping in the future, when you reflect back on your time as county commissioners, you're going to feel good about the support you've given our project. So let me start by talking to you just for a minute, see if this will roll forward. There we go. I want to introduce our team. First of all, I represent the Edward C. Levy Company. The Levy Company is a terrific company, over 100 years old. They operate across the United States and a number of continents, and they operate locally as the Schmidt Construction Company. That's our premier paving company, and you probably have heard about them. With me today is Mr. Steve Weiner. Steve, if you'll stand up or wave. Steve is the vice president of the company. He's the guy in charge of all their real estate worldwide. And his job is to take raw pieces of ground off and reclaim mining sites and turn them into something magnificent. He's a great leader for the project, been with Levy for a number of years, before that with the Walt Disney Company, handling development, doing small projects like opening a new theme park in France. So it's a pleasure to do that, to work with them. Oftentimes you worry about who is the applicant, and you probably should. And what I want to tell you is while this company is headquartered in Michigan, they're strongly tied to Colorado Springs. They've been operating as Schmidt for decades. They'll be operating for decades in the future. Their president is a Colorado College graduate. They love our community, and I can tell you it's an honor and a pleasure for me to work with them. They're great corporate citizens. Next person I want to introduce is Gary Barber. By the way, on D-Day celebration, Gary's an Air Force Academy grad. But Gary is really the father of the project. You probably know him as a water expert, but he got engaged by the county when Jeff Green was the administrator. The question was asked, how do we create jobs in El Paso County? They commissioned a study. Gary was the one they commissioned with his partner at that time, and they did a study and came up with this concept of the rail park. So Gary has been really the father of it. He's been working on this for a long time. Steve Weiner's charge to me was, look, this is a big project. This is a very important project. We need the best possible team we can put together. And I'm proud to say I think we have that. And I want to introduce them. This is going to be going on for some time. We got a great group leading it. And it starts with our land planners, NES. As you know, NES is the premier land planning firm in town. And the best planner is Andrea Barlow. She's the most thorough, most careful, most studious and thoughtful that you can have. And so in a minute, I'm going to shut up and she's going to talk to you about the details of the sketch plan. For civil engineering, Virgil Sanchez. Virgil, will you stand up? He's the principal of MS Civil. He's been doing all of our surveying work and our detailed engineering for drainage. It's 3,100 acres, big job. We're pleased to have him. We have Wilson & Company as our traffic engineers, and I think Eric Lundberg is here. Wilson & Company is over a 90-year-old company. They've got huge projects throughout the state they've done. We retain them because they know traffic engineering, traffic planning. They were commissioned by City of Fountain to do their master transportation plan. They also were the ones commissioned by the city and the county to look at where should the extension of Powers Boulevard land. So they already have a lot of data. We're pleased to be working with them. And then our rail engineers, Corey Beasley with HDR. Corey has been on board since the beginning. HDR is a national firm. They have tremendous expertise in rail engineering, Corey in particular. But on top of that, they have environmental engineers, but interestingly, they also have military planners. And up the street here where the Rock Rimmon offices are 40 engineers that do nothing but military planning. Fort Carson uses them. The counties use them. So we're pleased to have them. It's a really good team. So I want to, before I advance, say that we have gotten great help from the county in treatment. We've met with your leader, Brett Waters, a few times, and then Kerry Parsons, who was just up there. This is a unique project, and we've gotten absolutely terrific support, and we are appreciative of that. Going into the history, if this will advance, there we go. Did I get timed out? Let me see if this one will advance it. I'll keep talking while we're trying to get, there we go. Thank you, Kerry. The concept for this project, really the genesis came from El Paso County. When Jeff Green was the county administrator, asked the question, how do we create jobs in El Paso County? And this was the result of it, the concept. we started, this is really a regional project, and so you had to do that by first putting together a regional partnership. And we've been proceeding as a public-private partnership under a memorandum of understanding. El Paso County is one of our partners, City of Colorado Springs, City of Fountain, the Chamber and EDC, and the Edward C. Levy Company, my client. And so it's been a great partnership. We created an oversight committee for that, which had community leaders, and we've got the great benefit of that. Our current participants include Mayor Sharon Thompson from City of Fountain, the mayor there. We have Council Member Randy Helms representing the City of Colorado Springs. Dave Donaldson, Councilmember Donaldson from the city, representing Colorado Springs Utilities. And as you heard a little bit earlier, Commissioner Gonzalez has been the representative from El Paso County. He is our longest serving public official on that oversight committee. But we've greatly benefited from the advice, the kind of guidance we've gotten. It's been good. We've also had great assistance from the economic development community. Katie Poltz, who I think is in the audience here today from you, has been a great help to us. Kimberly Bailey has been holding hands with Gary Barber for 10 years on this. She's the City of Fountain EDC representative. And then most recently, Jonna Claymire, the new CEO of the EDC, has been a big help. She hired a guy named Tim Vanderhoof. You may or may not have met him. He's been a great help to us as well. So we're really quite benefited by a lot of people. Devin from the EDC, I think, is here in support. So it's been great. It's been a long, it's been a long process already. It'll be a longer process. For big projects, important projects, they take time, they take careful thought, and most importantly, they take strong, unified political leadership, and we've got the benefit of that, and we want to say thank you for it. Once we had the MOU in place, then the first question was, should we have a project? Do we have a project? Are there any deal stoppers? Our public-private partnership raised a little bit of money, engaged HCR, and did a feasibility study. There it is. That found that we have a project that doesn't have any fatal flaws, and it makes sense to continue on. We have done that. The next thing is we raised money, applied for an EDA grant, economic assistance grant, to let us look in more depth at this, make sure there weren't any deal stoppers. We're fortunate to get that, and we got a great EDA report. Well, again, I'm having trouble advancing this. Well, this is the report. As you can see, pretty meaty, pretty helpful. We're hoping that we'd find out we had a project. Am I hitting the wrong side, Terry? What am I doing wrong here?
See you look on the screen, see that arrow? You just got to click that.
What's your arrow on the screen? I'm sorry. Oh, okay, okay. All right. So, at any rate, that was the EDA report. And it said we still have a viable project that's going to provide a lot of benefits, and we should move forward with it, and we have. Now that's easy, but really to have a project, our first major challenge after that was we need to get permission from Colorado Springs to use the existing rail bridge, their existing rail spur, come across their property, so ultimately we can get to your property. That may not seem like a big deal, but imagine someone's asking you to run trains across your property. It's a big deal. It took a couple years to get it negotiated. We got it done, and we went last May to Colorado Springs Utilities Board and then to Colorado Springs City Council Board, and they unanimously approved our trackage agreement. It is a recorded document today. So last week, now we got a project. I mean, we clearly have a project. We're very excited. Last week, we submitted an application for a CRISI grant. That's a federal grant to provide the funding we'd like to have, or help provide some of the funding we need to have to do the detailed engineering and study of running the rail from the spur all the way through Levy's property to the boundary of Fort Carson. That's to do the engineering study, including the NEPA study, the environmental. So we submitted that last week. I want to point out and thank you all. First and foremost, you gave us a resolution and a letter of support for that. And I might mention we also needed to amend our MOU so City of Colorado Springs could be the applicant. I want to point out your county attorney, Ken Hodges. I sent him an email with that first amendment. Usually you have to pester people and get after them, you know. First thing I know, I get it back from him without problem. So thank you, Ken. I appreciate that. But at any rate, so we submitted that EDA, but the Chrissy grant last week. We're hopeful that we're going to get that. This has been a long process so far. It'll be longer further in the future. We had the benefit of a visit a couple of years ago from the then Secretary of the Army, Mark Esper, and he was briefed on the project, looked at that, and his comment was, this is the poster child for what a public-private partnership with the Army ought to be. And we're proud to be partners with you and bring this forward. So I want to now just talk for a minute about why we're here. As Carrie pointed out, this project will likely annex, right? So we're starting in the county. We are in the county today, but really, why are we here, and what are we doing, and why are we asking you to do this? Well, first of all, we will need a Title 32 metropolitan district ultimately. All big projects have it, and I'll explain in a minute why we need it. But to get a Title 32, you first have to establish the need formally, and that you do through the sketch plan process. So that's what we're here doing. Why do we need a Title 32? Well, all big projects will have a Title 32 metropolitan district. One, they are a financing mechanism, which I'll talk about, but it's good to have a quasi-governmental body that's involved with the oversight of the project. For a lot of your grant applications, they require a Title 32 or a quasi-governmental entity to be the applicant. We anticipate in the future with potential future grants, our Title 32 might be the applicant. There's also what's called a Title 29. I don't want to take a lot of time on this, but there is a statute that says when two or more government or quasi-governmental entities want to do a project, they can form a Title 29. Here we would call it a rail authority. Likely the rail authority then would carry the public part of this project forward. And so we may join that or form that, but to do that, we need to first have our Title 32 so we have a member that can be part of that partnership on the Title 29. Our major and first priority of this project, to Steve Weiner's great credit, is get the rail line to Fort Carson. That's our first emphasis. That is not a cheap operation in and of itself. When you look at the detailed engineering and the construction, it's about a $25 million ticket. But we will likely want to put that rail line into the quasi-governmental entity, which will either be our Title 32 or our Title 29. When you're applying for a grant, one of the things that is very helpful is to have some level of government backing and support. That's what the reviewing authorities look for. We have that already in part because we've been proceeding as a public-private partnership under the MOU, but having a level of governmental support of the concept of the rail park is going to be very helpful to us. We do that through the sketch plan, so that's why we're here. We're hoping to get your support on that. Also with grants, oftentimes the money is in two buckets. One bucket is urban, one bucket is rural. We are a rural project right now. We're in unincorporated El Paso County, which is where we should be now and want to stay now. Ultimately, that may shift, but right now we want to be there. You use Title 32s to finance. That's why also we'll be bringing it to you. The cost of infrastructure will be significant, and most people will raise that money in part by sale of tax-free bonds. But perhaps most importantly, under our trackage agreement, we have taken on some responsibilities for long-term maintenance of the rail lines and security in our site plus the Nixon Power Plant site. When you have long-term responsibilities, you have to make sure they get funded, and the right way to do that is by forming a Title 32 metropolitan district and having that metropolitan district assume those responsibilities. They have taxing authority. They can raise the money dependably in the future. It's the right way to do it. We're proceeding on that way right now, and we anticipate submitting our application for a Title 32 in the very near future. So that's why we're here today, a little bit of background on that, background on the project. But to get our Title 32, we first need the sketch plan approved, which we're hoping you'll do today. But I want to turn over the podium now to Andrea to give you the detail on our sketch plan, and then I'll take it back for some closing comments. If you have any questions now, you can ask them, but Andrea's probably going to answer. So.
Thank you. Steve, Andrea Barlow with NES, representing Levy Company. I'm just going to talk about the actual sketch plan. So I think you've already seen the site location, just highlighting here more clearly the out parcels. I'll talk a little bit more about those as we get further in the presentation. But we have Fort Carson surrounding on 3 sides with the power plant and a quarry owned by City of Fountain to the northeast. So the sketch plan itself, I'm going to take a little time to discuss what we're proposing here. So we have a variety of land uses, primarily industrial in nature. We have identified on the north boundary, adjacent to Charter Oak Ranch Road, a small area of commercial development for a commercial centre. That was at the specific request of Fort Carson. They wanted some facilities just outside Gate 19 to serve their soldiers and the civilian population as they come and go, restaurants and the like. So we've incorporated a small commercial element in that location. And then kind of transition to the more industrial side, we've identified an area that is probably going to be more commercial services. I see that being maybe some warehousing, self-storage possibly, or some industrial warehousing. And then this lighter purple area is an area we've identified for lighter industrial uses, and then moving into the darker purple areas adjacent to the rail line and the rail loop as heavier industrial. I mean, there really aren't any areas of heavy industrial use in the city or the county of this size, so they are substantial areas. I'll talk a little bit more about the acreages. We've also, in the green areas, we've identified some areas where we know we're going to need some sort of flood mitigation or potential detention, regional detention facilities. That was backed up by the drainage report that was submitted with the sketch plan. We have here an area of floodplain. We have 2 creeks coming into this property. So we have Little Fountain Creek and Rock Creek coming in into a kind of confluence here, and then coming down into this blue area, which is floodplain. This area here where we have that confluence of the creeks, and there's an existing homestead there, that area we've identified for low impact uses. We don't know what they will be yet. We just know that could be a potentially sensitive area from a drainage perspective. So we're going to have to look at that in more detail when we get to that. We're just kind of highlighting it at this point. These hatched areas, there is a bit of a bluff here, so this area on the northeast side is at a higher level. It drops down. So these hatched areas were identified as no-build areas, and in the geological hazard report identified as having some slope stability concerns that need to be looked at in more detail. Obviously, we're going to be proposing a road through there. So our road network is primarily coming off of Charter Oak Ranch Road for our first phase, and then that will eventually loop round and connect through the CSU property. So with that trackage agreement that Steve referenced, there was also an agreement to allow this property to access through there to a future location of a intersection on I-25, which will then connect to the Powers extension to the east. Now, that intersection is not set right now, so we do know it could change, but we can account for that fairly readily by altering the course of the access from the property. And then the rail spur extension from the existing rail loop that serves the power plant is going to come through the property and connect into Fort Carson. And we have here an access that we're showing into Fort Carson. There were discussions earlier on about providing an alternative access into Fort Carson and potentially relocating Gate 19. Fort Carson are not 100% on board with that yet, but we are still identifying that as a potential access. We feel that there could be merit in traffic coming from the south into Fort Carson, instead of going all the way up to Charter Oak Ranch Road and coming across, to actually divert through the site once it's developed and coming in a more direct route. So that's kind of a general overview of the sketch plan. Here are the land uses, just in a little bit more detail to identify kind of the type of uses we're anticipating. So as I say, ranging from commercial, like a pure commercial center, that was only about 10 acres, by the way, so it's not a large area, to commercial services, light industrial, and then for the majority of the site, heavy industrial uses. Where's it gone? There you are. So this shows a breakdown of the land uses, approximate timeline. We've really looked at it in 5-year tranches. Actually, I do want to go back because one thing I forgot to mention on the sketch plan. This area, which is hatched, you can barely see it probably, but this area is the existing mining operation. And that is anticipated to continue for about 10, 15 years. So this area will actually be our last phase, which you'll see in a later slide. I just wanted to point that out. So we've estimated approximately 5-year tranches for the construction of the phasing, and I've got phasing plans which I'll show in more detail. The first phase being the rail spur itself, and then various the commercial services and light industrial, with some heavy industrial in phase 1, and then kind of moving through the development. What I wanted to identify here is kind of explain how we've come to our estimate of employees. So we've adjusted acreages, knowing that the acreages, as you can see, some of these areas are fairly large chunks. So within that, even though we've identified larger areas for regional drainage and detention and the major infrastructure network, we haven't identified all the internal roads and probably some additional stormwater facilities that will be needed. So we've adjusted acreage for that. We've estimated the floor area ratio, the actual number of the building footprint that will be on these properties by analysing other similar developments. It's a very low building footprint per acre, so the FAR is very low because the majority of these sites are generally storage. And then approximate square footage from that. And then based on information given to us by interested uses for industrial and what we know about commercial from the Chamber and EDC, and also from Fountain Economic Development, we've estimated a number of employees per square feet. Now this is very broad range estimates. There is a science behind it, but it's not an exact science. So this is an approximation of what we think we will be in the region of. It could be a little bit less, it could be a little bit more. Then the phasing plan, just to go through it, we've kind of highlighted it in sequence. So as you can see in purple here is the rail connection, that will be the first phase. And then the area in red, pinkish color there is phase 2. So that includes the initial development, which we could access directly off Charter Oak Ranch Road. We are showing a road access point here, so we could just access that area. And then with the extension proposed, the main kind of arterial through the site or collector through the site, we would access this area adjacent to the railroad. And then phase 3, we'll be looking at in the south part of the property. And that, just to talk about access, then we anticipate being to accommodate phase 2, which is phase 1 of development, so phase 1 is railroad, with just access of Charter Oak Ranch Road. Once we start getting into phase 3, we'll be looking to provide that connection over to Powers based on the traffic report. And then phase 4 is the area which is currently the mining operation that will come on stream at the end. So obviously we have to look at compliance with the sketch plan review criteria. I just want to highlight them for you. I think they're probably in your package. I'm not going to go through them one by one, but there are a couple I want to talk about, which one is the master plan compliance and compatibility with the surrounding area. The others are kind of more technical, and as Ms. Parsons mentioned, we have submitted reports on drainage, traffic, environmental, geologic hazards, and so on, which have all been evaluated by staff, and they're satisfied that at this high level of planning that they meet the sketch plan requirements, subject to the provision that we know if we were to progress any further planning in the county, that we would have to do more detailed reports. This thing keeps going away, there you go. So the master plan, first of all, it is an employment centre place type, and as Ms. Parsons noted, much of this designation and policies in the master plan were with the knowledge of this intended rail park, so they very much support the rail park. It is a priority employment area as well, which is where the master plan recommends diversifying the economy. It's also a potential area for annexation and new development. And there are some very specific policies, and I'm just going to highlight a couple. So obviously large employees going next to major roadways were adjacent to I-25 with a connection proposed to I-25, so it satisfies that objective of recruiting new business. But I think this one is probably the most significant. Identify areas where there's enough land to support companies that require a significant development footprint. And that's what's unique about this particular property. It's over 3,000 acres. There are businesses that really want a large site area, and this site can accommodate that. And that makes it unique, not only in the Colorado Springs Pikes Peak region, but really statewide from a perspective of regional growth. And then the other policies here are really about supporting Fort Carson and improving access to Fort Carson, which we have the opportunity to do if Fort Carson wants to get on board with that new access and new gate access. And then a few others which are also connected with improving the gate traffic and helping to develop an alternative rail connection to Fort Carson, which is obviously a significant aspect of this project. Compatibility with the surrounding uses, we've got a lot of quite interesting uses surrounding us. Obviously with Fort Carson to the north, west and south, we have a neighbour that has some fairly active uses directly adjacent to the site, including ammunition ranges, firing ranges, ammunition holding areas, firing ranges, and the airfield. So, I mean, and given that you have a City of Fountain quarry to the east and the power plant, there's really very few uses that would be appropriate in this location. I mean, it has to be a use that can transition between those surrounding uses, and we believe that this industrial park does that. And we mentioned some out parcels. There are some interesting scenarios here. So you have 6 out parcels with 4 ownerships. One person owns this property here, which is zoned I3 in the county anyway. So it is an isolated pocket of I3 zoning amongst the rest of the property, which is zoned RR5 or agriculture. They also own this parcel, 5 acres in this location, and then we have another 5-acre parcel owner here, and this property is 20 acres under one ownership, although it's 2 parcels. And this property, interestingly as well, and we really don't understand why, is actually in the City of Fountain. Obviously doesn't have any contiguity, and how that ended up being in the City of Fountain, we don't know. But anyway, there are 4 separate owners of these 6 out parcels. We have contacted all of them and have had conversations with 3. We've had no response from 1. And we are having those conversations. Some of that has been, much of that has been spearheaded by Scott with Schmidt Construction, and also with help from the City of Fountain. And we've got general buy-in from a couple of them about what's happening, but it will be an ongoing conversation. I think it's obviously significant that nobody's here today to object to the project or at Planning Commission either, and no letters have been written. So with that, I'm going to hand back to Steve to talk briefly about some of the project benefits.
Thank you, Andrea. So I'm going to try to wrap it up and talk to you for a minute, high level, about why this project is a great project and should be supported. And quite honestly, the first thing is it's really a boost to Fort Carson. This is the D-Day celebration. Thank you for doing that, by the way. We enjoyed sitting through it, but it's important we do that. This, right now, the existing rail operation for Fort Carson is really problematic. They exit on the north end of the post, which is by South Academy. The trains load there. They're completely visible while they're loaded. They have to slowly load. They were designed when we had shorter trains, so they're inadequate. They actually back the trains out of the post as they're loading, slowly wind through a neighborhood while they're exposed to ultimately get to Kelker Junction. But perhaps most importantly, there's 7 critical points of failure along the route, any one of which a terrorist could take out the ability to deploy 1/10 of our fighting force. Very, very bad. And so our rail project will give them a second, more dependable, but resiliency, redundancy, and rail access, which they really need to do. You see the letter on the right, that was written by at that time, the 4th Infantry Division Commanding General, General McFarland, who describes it, this is an important project. They need to have a better way to deploy, and ultimately says this is the highest priority readiness-related military construction project they had. They are in the MILCON system for the post side of the project right now. That's a long process, but they're in there. You know, historically, and on D-Day celebration, this is great to say, historically our community has gone above and beyond trying to take care of our military. They're important people to us. Selfishly, they're the largest, Fort Carson is the largest employer, not only locally, but in the state. And my background is Army. I went to West Point. I take personal pride, no credit, but personal pride in when you look at the ID cards for Fort Carson, they say, best home in the Army. We've always done that. We want Fort Carson to be more BRAC-proof. Improving their rail access is an important thing. That is the first phase and the first priority for the project. Also, as you'll see up here, this was Steve Winder's thought. If we're doing a rail line across our property, we ought to give a utility easement to Colorado Springs Utilities, so if they find they need it, they can provide a redundant utility line to Fort Carson. That is what it's all about at DoD today. Do you have resiliency? Is there more than one way? Not just on your access, but also on utilities. So we provide that. Also, the rail line saves our roads. It's estimated that one rail car removes 4 truck trips from the road. We have unit trains. 100 rail cars removes 400 truck trips from the road. That saves on wear and tear, increases safety, and helps us environmentally. It's very important, and it's a good part of this. As you've heard probably ad nauseum now, this started as how do we create jobs, and it will do that. This is a mega site. What this chart shows, and I'm not going to spend much time on it, is that we're increasing population in Colorado dramatically. This area around our rail park is going to increase in population at a greater rate than the state or the nation. So we got to plan for it. What do? We need jobs for these people. It's estimated we'll provide 7,700 new jobs through this, so it's important we do this. But while we've been growing in population, we have been steadily losing manufacturing from our region. This chart is Colorado Springs, but shows that in the last 2 decades, 2000 to 2022, we've lost over half of our jobs, manufacturing jobs, over almost 12,000 manufacturing jobs lost. And that's a strategic problem for the United States and for us locally. We've always been smart enough, and on D-Day, what a good thing to think about. We've known for years we could not afford to have a foreign country manufacture our fighter jets and our tanks, right? That'd be stupid. We weren't brain dead. Today, what you need to know is if you go out and buy a new car today, it takes 1,200 chips to run it. I don't know the number in a fighter jet with all the weapon systems, surveillance systems, et cetera, but it's probably 10 times that. Well, 20 years ago, the United States manufactured 48% of the chips. Today, we're down to 12, and we manufacture none of the advanced chips. We got to bring them back. We learned this during COVID. We have a problem. We're weak in the United States because we don't make anything. We're dependent on other countries to make it. During COVID, I was worried about toilet paper more than chips, but that we lived it. We know it. So this will help bring manufacturing back. And if you're going to do that, if you're going to bring manufacturing back, you need to have a place to do it. Andrea talked about that a minute ago. We have really no heavy industrial sites in the city of Colorado Springs, in the county. We need to do that. So it's good to say bring it back, but where are we going to put them? The EDC commissioned a study by Newmark to look at our region and find out where we were good and where we were bad. And one of the things they said is we're really not strong because we have only small, 10-acre, 20-acre sites. This is a mega site. It will solve those problems. 3,100 acres to be developed for manufacturing. So that's really good. I don't need to tell you this, but if you want to approve a project, you have a public hearing, right? And today, to get an apartment complex approved next to a single-family residential development is a major trauma. You lived through it. I don't have to tell you that. Imagine now you're trying to approve a manufacturing site. You need to have an appropriate site. This site is perfect. Two perfect neighbors, Fort Carson's live fire range, for their tanks, and the Colorado Springs utility, the Nixon power plant. Perfect neighbors to be on either side of a manufacturing site. It is not visible from I-25, which is amazing. The terrain helps us. So it's perfect that way, and it's a large site. And then in addition to that, dual served by both Class 1 rail, BNSF, and Union Pacific. That's a rare thing, so manufacturers that are dependent on rail, ideal site for them. For some reason, I've lost this. I don't know if I can get it back or not to show you the benefit summary, but I can wrap it up without it and probably should. So the last thing on the manufacturing site, what the site planners will tell you is the first thing that a new big company is worried about if they bring manufacturing back is, do we have a labor force? We got to have labor, otherwise we can't run our facilities. And we have the amazing situation here. We've got 5 military installations. From Fort Carson alone, each month, 400 people leave military service. 65% want to remain here if they can get a job. This is a great workforce. They're already have skills, they're trainable, they're disciplined, they know chain of command. But they need to maybe have a little bit more education. We have a perfect partnership with Pikes Peak State College. They see their mission as providing education that leads to jobs. Lance Bolton has a letter, if this didn't shut down, I'll show it to you, in your packet, is a letter from him saying, we relish the opportunity to tailor courses to new manufacturers that are coming here. Bring them to us, have them educate us what we need to teach, and we'll teach it. So we have a great workforce ready to be educated and an educator that's ready to work with us. So it's really great. So let me just summarize and urge you to support our sketch plan. It's a great thing. It's going to provide a major benefit to Fort Carson by providing a second much-needed rail access, more secure, giving them redundancy and resiliency. It's going to create about 7,700 new jobs, bring back manufacturing to the United States, a strategic thing we really need to do to add some, I said at the very beginning, I think this is going to create a second economic engine. Historically, we've been too dependent on government locally in our economy. This is going to bring manufacturing back and help us that way. We've got strong community support. I didn't mention in our EDA grant, that's a federal grant, so you were kind enough to give us a letter of support. We also had a letter co-signed by Senators Bennett and Hickenlooper supporting our EDA grant, and as well a letter from Congressman Lamborn. So we've had great community support, great participation. We appreciate that. This sketch plan not only supports the county master plan, it implements it, and we meet all the sketch plan criteria. I appreciate all the time you've given us this morning. We will try to answer any questions you have, but I'd urge you to approve our sketch plan, follow the unanimous recommendation of your Planning Commission. If you have any questions, we'll try our best.
Do we have any questions for the applicant at this time? Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This seems to make an enormous amount of sense to me, so I appreciate the presentation and all that. There was something that you mentioned, 7 points of weakness at the current rail line going into Carson. I don't know if that's the right number, wrong number. It certainly does have its challenges. But in producing an alternative rail line, if I recall right, getting into Carson on this alternative route requires going over a bridge over I-25, and that does sound like a point of weakness as well. So I don't know if there's been any thinking about, addressing that somehow, some way. I don't have a good answer for that, but I just was wondering if there's been any thought about that.
I appreciate the question, Commissioner. In fact, that bridge over I-25 is one of the weaknesses. It is old. It needs to be replaced. It is Fort Carson's only way to deploy, and at least unless there's been a change recently, it is the pinch point in expansion I-25 between Denver and Pueblo. It is the point where they'd like to expand, but they cannot. And CDOT has wanted to work on that bridge, but they can't take it out of commission because it takes Fort Carson out of commission. We would not be using that bridge when they go out the south, so it avoids that thing. They'll go immediately south from our site, and that is one of the problems. And you're right, exactly right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, we will take any public input in support of this application. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in support of this application? Now is your chance. Okay, anyone online? Excellent. I think that was a thorough presentation that included everybody in it. At this time, is there anyone who's wishing to speak in opposition of this item? Hearing none in the room and none online. Okay, the public hearing portion of this is concluded. Commissioners, do we have any more discussion or questions at this time? Okay. Is anyone ready to provide a motion?
I would move approval of item number 12, the sketch plan for the Southern Colorado Rail Park sketch plan.
I'll second.
Okay, any other comments? Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then again, I appreciate all the information that I did see here today was the only information I had seen previously. So I don't think there was anything that I was aware of that was not included in this description. And so I feel very confident that I am basing all of my vote today based on what I see here today. It is an area that has already been highlighted. It makes a lot of sense. The community partnerships coming together, the potential for the jobs, and then clearly in an area of that's already industry, a quarry, utilities, a power plant. This is, I believe, an ideal situation for this project.
Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you. Yes, I'll also just say I think it obviously meets the criteria very specifically, which I appreciate. It's in support of our military, and Fort Carson has contributions to our national security, which is, of course, incredibly important, and overall will strengthen our community. I think this is a great project, and we have to make a lot of hard decisions here. This is not one of the ones that is incredibly difficult because it does seem like such a wonderful and natural fit for the area. Thank you.
Well said, Commissioner. Commissioner Vandenwerf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll concur with the comments stated previously by my fellow commissioners. I do believe it also meets the criteria. It does seem to be an ideal location, especially considering the other activities that surrounds the property. And also, I feel very strongly about some of the comments that were made about bringing more manufacturing back to the United States. Our reliance on China is also a national security consideration of great concern to me. As an industrial engineer, I just feel like it is a good idea that we grow manufacturing in the Colorado Springs, El Paso County area. This is a way we can contribute to enhancing national security, and I would imagine that at some point down the road, assuming this project does go forward as intended, there probably will be some companies that will want to use some of these sites to actually help Fort Carson do depot maintenance on their tactical vehicles as well. So I think this is a very intriguing and very interesting And I will be supporting this project. Thank you.
Commissioner Williams?
I am excited to support this project when I heard about the need for it and realized all of those trains were lining up in Strathmore Valley. I felt very strongly about that from almost day one. I think it's a good project, good for our economy. And so I will be in support of this.
Excellent, thank you. And just wrapping up, I too agree that it meets the sketch plan requirements and criteria, and we do all have those in front of us as well. And it's a real pleasure when not only does the application meet the requirements, it's really gone above and beyond in providing an overall community benefit while still meeting all of the criteria that we must consider as we consider these items. So I too am excited that this is one of our easier decisions and one that I think will impact generations to come, actually. Kind of a theme here today. And support our military as well. And it's just exciting to see the collaboration and cooperation that has occurred with this project. El Paso County is proud to be a small part of that. And I believe Mr. Mulligan said that this was dubbed the poster child of a public-private partnership. I absolutely agree, and I'm happy to support this as well today. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to highlight one last time, I remain unbiased on this project, even with the lead attorney being a West Point graduate.
Okay, with that and no further comments, I will call the roll. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Geithner. And the chair votes aye. That passes 5-0. Congratulations, and thank you for being here. Item 13.
Item number 13 is department and committee reports, non-action items. 13A, first quarter sales and use tax 2024. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer.
Good morning, Commissioners. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer. I will be very brief this morning so that we can make a hard deadline that we have. Just wanted to put in front of you our sales and use tax for March of 2024. This is the most recent information that we have regarding our sales and use tax collections. This is consumer activity that happened in the month of March, remitted to the Department of Revenue in Colorado for in April, and we received this information in mid-May. The collections collected through the Department of Revenue are about flat for the month of March, but year to date up 2.71%. The budget for the year, if you recall, is a 3% increase, so that's kind of what we're judging this based on. So right now we're trending very close to that number. Use tax on automobiles is up currently year to date 9.29%, but and that's through April because we get that 1 month faster than the rest of our sales taxes. So if you look through March, it's 3.88%, but then had a strong April. And then if you look at use tax collections for the regional building, through the regional building department and El Paso County for construction use tax, about flat through March, but then had a very strong April, so up 4.32% through April. So when you put everything together, we're up 2.73%, and again, that's comparing to that 3% number. So trending very close to what we planned on for the year. And then a bar chart to show you month by month, year by year, where we're going. And then compared to budget through March, we're looking at about a $729,000 variance. A positive variance compared to budget. So that's all I'll go through in public session. There are reports online that can show the details and those are already posted. They were posted this morning for showing the details industry by industry and how things are trending through March. So if anybody's interested in that information, it is available to everybody.
Excellent. Any further questions for Ms. Simmons? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 14.
Item number 14 is the addendum, and there are no addendums today.
Item 15.
Item 15 is the executive session, and there is no request for executive session.
We are adjourned.